So, greetings and good afternoon. Welcome to today's event, MIT's own astronaut, a virtual conversation with alumnus, Mike Fincke, AeroAstro alumnus Michael Fincke. I'm Elizabeth Wood, professor of Russian and Soviet history here at MIT and director of the MIT Russia program. This event is being sponsored by the MIT Russia program and the MIT AeroAstro Department. My warmest thanks to Katya Zabrovsky, the managing director of MIT Russia, and Joyce Light, in charge of programs and strategic initiatives in AeroAstro, for all their organizing to make this happen. Today's conversation between NASA astronaut Mike Fincke and MIT's own alum Piper Segrest couldn't come at a more exciting time. The world has just celebrated the 60th anniversary of Yuri Gagarin's first solo human flight in 1961. This past Saturday, 2 Russian cosmonauts and 1 American landed safely in Kazakhstan from the International Space Station. They had been in space for 185 days. This coming Thursday, 4 SpaceX Crew 2 astronauts will launch from Kennedy Space Center in Florida, the second crew rotation in a US commercial flight. The space station has now been continuously inhabited for 20 years, another milestone, with 243 people from 19 countries visiting and hosting more than 3,000 research investigations with researchers from 108 countries. But let me tell you about Piper Segrest, who will in turn introduce Mike Fincke. And if you see me grinning ear to ear, it's because we are all insanely proud of our own outstanding MIT grad, who in fact has a lot in common with Michael Fincke. Both are MIT alums, both studied Russian here at MIT, and both have an extraordinary exploratory spirit. Piper Segrest is currently a PhD candidate in AeroAstro engineering at the University of Michigan and concurrently pursuing a graduate certificate in Russian studies. They graduated from MIT in 2018 with a BS in aerospace engineering and a minor in Russian and Eurasian studies. While an undergrad at MIT, Piper learned Russian from our own Maria Khatimsky, senior lecturer in Russian language, and through Misty Russia, developed and led hands-on STEM workshops for middle and high school students in Kazakhstan and Russia in January 2017 and January 2018. In the summer of 2019, Piper studied in Moscow and volunteered at the Memorial Museum of Cosmonautics. Piper is a 2017 Brooke Owens Fellow and has interned at NASA, Aurora Flight Sciences, SpaceX, Virgin Orbit, and Blue Origin. As you will hear, Piper is an aspiring astronaut and seeks to engineer and fly space missions after graduating. So my warmest thanks to Michael Fincke and to Piper Segrest for agreeing to join us in this conversation. I turn the floor over to you, Piper.
Thank you so much for that kind introduction, Elizabeth. It is my honor to now introduce Colonel Michael Fincke, an MIT alum, NASA astronaut, and veteran of 3 space flights. He is currently preparing for his 4th space flight. Colonel Fincke earned a bachelor's degree in Aeronautics and Astronautics, as well as a bachelor's degree in Earth, Atmospheric, and Planetary Sciences from MIT in 1989. He attended a summer exchange program at the Moscow Aviation Institute after graduating from MIT. Then he completed his master's in Aeronautics and Astronautics in Stanford. Colonel Fincke also holds an associate's degree in Earth Sciences from El Camino College and a master's in Physical Sciences from the University of Houston, Clear Lake. He is a top grad of the Air Force Test Pilot School. Through the U.S. Air Force, Colonel Fincke spent time in the Euro-NATO Jet Pilot Training Program and acted as a space systems engineer, space test engineer, and flight test engineer. Colonel Fincke has over 1,900 flight hours in more than 30 different aircraft, including the F-16 and F-15. Colonel Fincke has flown on 3 space missions, Expedition 9 in 2004, Expedition 18 in 2009, and STS-134 in 2011. Colonel Fincke has logged more than a year in orbit and 9 spacewalks. He served as the ISS commander. Because of his Russian studies and including his time as an exchange student, Colonel Fincke is qualified to fly as Soyuz co-pilot and is the American with the greatest number of Russian spacewalks, 6. He launched from Yuri Gagarin's launch pad twice. After working with NASA's Commercial Crew Program to develop and bring 2 new crewed spacecrafts online, the SpaceX Crew Dragon and Boeing CST-100 Starliner, Fincke was selected to serve as the Joint Operations Commander on the first crewed experimental test flight of the Starliner, scheduled to launch to the International Space Station later this year. Riding on the Atlas V launch vehicle, this will be Mike's third rocket and spacecraft combination to orbit. In addition to his impressive list of experiences, Colonel Fincke is the recipient of 2 NASA Distinguished Service Medals, 3 NASA Spaceflight Medals, the International Space Station Leadership Award, and many others for his military service and training. This is just a brief summary of Colonel Fincke's long list of accomplishments. We're so excited to have the chance to speak with him today and learn more about his experiences as an astronaut and with Russian language. We have some questions prepared, and we'll leave a few minutes open at the end of this event for any audience questions. Audience members, if you have any questions for us, please submit them using the Q&A feature in your webinar. This event is being recorded, and the attendees will all receive a YouTube link after the event via email. So please join me in giving a warm welcome to Mike. The applause isn't quite the same over Zoom.
Well, Piper, thank you for the kind introduction, and thank you to Dr. Wood and all of the team that it took to get this seminar together. As a very, very proud and grateful alum of the Institute, I am so glad to have a chance here to share some adventures, to talk about the past and to look forward to the future. And combining some of my favorite things, aeronautics, astronautics, and Russian language. So it appears I'm at the right place at the right seminar at the right time. So thank you again, everybody. And it sounds like my audio and video are working. So Kak skazal Gagarin Payekali, or that's what Yuri Gagarin said on his when he launched on April 12th, 1961. That was his famous word, Payekali. So we're beginning.
Let's go. Very good. So we'll dive right in then. Mike, you have the very unique experience of flying both on the Russian Soyuz for expeditions 9 and 18, as well as the American shuttle for STS-134. What was it like flying on each of those spacecraft?
Yeah, for a while there, I was like a very special person because I got to fly on 2 different spacecraft, and now I'll be one of the first in a long time to fly on 3. So and it's that richness of experience. So the Soyuz was designed in 1960s. It was kind of an answer to the Apollo program. Soyuz originally, the original variation was going to go fly to the moon. Things changed. It became a Soyuz T for taxi to early Soviet space stations. Then it became TM because M was modernized. They even slipped in a digital computer, which was pretty cool. And then we made it TMA for anthropomorphized. In other words, put in a glass cockpit so taller people could fit in. But as I'm not Russian by genetics, but I have the Russian Soviet physiotype from the 1960s male. I don't smoke or drink as much as those guys did, but I definitely fit into the Soyuz very well. So for me, it was a nice, comfortable ride both times. And yeah, I launched off of Yuri Gagarin's launch pad. How cool is that? I mean, when I was growing up and when I was at the Institute, was no way that Americans and Soviets were ever going to get along and do these things. So now we're great partners in space. We still got some issues on the ground. I hope we work through those. But launching off of Yuri Gagarin's launch pad was really cool. And so it was really a surreal experience. The whole launch experience is amazing, but I'll cut you guys in on a secret. It only lasts about somewhere between 8 and 10 minutes, no matter which rocket you launch on. So it goes by fast, and but it was really amazing. And being on a mission with your friends is really cool. So launching on Soyuz was pretty nice. The Soyuz rocket, based on the R7 that Korolev started with Gagarin. Before then it was Intercontinental Ballistic Missile, but then we put Sputnik and then Gagarin. That's why everyone launches off the same launch pad, because that's how it's built. So it was really smooth. It's a pure liquid rocket engines with boosters and everything. We had great staging, and before we knew it, we were in orbit. Space shuttle different. It was designed the post Apollo Soyuz kind of era, and it had these big solid rocket boosters on the side, and they made a lot of noise and a lot of vibration for the first 2 minutes and 10 seconds, I believe. And then once the solid rocket boosters peeled off we went, and we call it the electric ride. But Soyuz was electric so to speak, all the way up, and we had a nice smooth ride on the shuttle afterwards. Again, both were just super amazing experiences. Space shuttle had a lot of legroom. It was like flying in first class in terms of the amount of legroom you had. Soyuz, I call it economy, maybe, but it didn't matter. You weren't that inconvenienced. In fact, it's a lot longer to fly to Russia than it is to fly to orbit from the United States.
That's a crazy thought to have, that comparison, across versus up. How fantastic. Yeah, you mentioned this will be coming up your third spacecraft you will have had the chance to fly. What's the latest news on the launch date?
Yeah, so we're as Dr. Wood mentioned at the very beginning. We got our SpaceX partners with NASA. We call them partners, but actually the whole commercial crew concept is pretty cool. Instead of NASA owning the hardware, we just rent it. It's like a rental car. So we pay SpaceX the money, they give us the keys to the spacecraft, and off we go to the space station there and back. And anybody else who isn't NASA that wants to borrow or rent the spacecraft from SpaceX, the opportunity is there. The question is, how much of a rental contract do you have, and availability and things like that. And that's what's really neat about the commercial crew. It opens up a new opportunity for more people and to fly in space, and more commerce, and more ways to make money. And that's what motivates a lot of people to have an industry in space. So this is a very good thing. Boeing, we're a little bit behind. I don't work for Boeing company. I'm one of the rental customers. But it's been really cool to help both the Crew Dragon and the Starliner to get ready. There's a lot of things that most Americans didn't have, especially the engineers, and that was with the Soyuz experience of flying in a capsule. Last time we flew a capsule, I think, was like Apollo Soyuz back in 1975. So most of our engineers didn't know that what you could do with a non-winged vehicle. So those of us with Soyuz experience were able to share some ideas and made people think, oh yeah, that's interesting. Or what you can do with when you think a digital computer is a really cool improvement. So with the new spacecraft, we're able to do a lot of amazing things, including fit more people in. So we have ability to fly 4, maybe someday 5 aboard the Starliner. We had software problems, which I think the Soviets really didn't have too many software problems with the early missions, and neither did we, to be honest. There's not a lot of software in the 60s technology, but the 2000s and 2010s technology, everything is software. So on our first uncrewed flight in December of 2019, Boeing as a company, NASA didn't force them to or ask them to, but Boeing as a company said they wanted to do that one again. So we gave them a mulligan, and now they're flying a second uncrewed spacecraft, and we're going to do it this summer. Fortunately, or shall we say a good problem to have, is the International Space Station is so popular these days. The traffic going up and down is just incredible. All different kinds of launch vehicles, all different kinds of spacecraft, most of them cargo, go up and down to the space station all the time. So having a spot open for the what we call Orbital Flight Test 2, or OFT2, is it won't come open till the summertime, and then we'll fly the OFT2 mission. And then afterwards, if everything goes well, when everything goes well, we'll fly it. Our crew will fly to the International Space Station, launching on an Atlas V, which for you trivia buffs out there, and I'm sure all my AeroAstro friends recognize, has a RD-180, Raketny Двигатель 180, Russian-built rocket engine. So, and sometimes people, they're a little disappointed. It's like, nope, not my first Russian rocket engine to fly on. But we're going to launch to the space station hopefully end of this year is the official date. And if things slip, we're ready. So I was glad to be able to take some time away from training to come and spend today's seminar with you. Sorry, short question, long answer, but I'm excited.
No, that's what we're here for. I think we're all here for the long answers, because those tend to be the best ones. But yeah, I'm very glad that you brought up, sharing your experiences with the engineers and flying on the capsule type spacecraft. I'm curious, if you've been involved with the design and the engineering process at all of the spacecraft, and what's that's been like.
Yeah, that has been the joy of it. Most of the time, astronauts, especially in the in the shuttle era and in the Soyuz era, we're not asked to help. In fact, they discourage us for coming up with any good ideas for something that's already been made, and the operational kinks have been kind of worked through. So my flight test experience with new spacecraft and new things, new aircraft and aerospace things really was not appreciated, or that's the wrong word. They weren't looking for inputs for shuttle and Soyuz. We did help with the International Space Station. I spent a lot of time over in Russia, in Moscow, with the first modules of the space station that were launched by Russia, the FGB, which we call, what do we call FGB? We call it Zvezda. Yet we call it Zarya. We call it Zarya, and then Zvezda is the service module. I call them by their engineering names, not their cool, fancy names. But if anyone asks, I gave the right answers. And we got those ready, and we helped with all the way from little things like dual language translation of all the buttons and dials and things and the flight procedures, but also how to operate the first modules in the first part of space station. So that kind of engineering was appreciated. But it really hit the road when we started working with SpaceX and with Boeing, and I was able to really contribute. And I spent a long time, since about 2013, helping both SpaceX and Boeing get off the ground. We also had another partner at the time with a Sierra Nevada Corporation and their Dream Chaser, and it's just really fun. So all those lessons at Unified that I didn't fall asleep for, which was all of them as far as anyone asks, all of the lectures and things that I learned from my professors at MIT, they really paid off for building new things that go fly in space. And how lucky I am to get a chance to have participated. And I feel like some of my knowledge and know-how and good ideas have been incorporated. Any bad ideas were thrown away, but the good ideas are in there, and it's a fun job to be able to make something new.
It must be really gratifying to get to see, both halves of that, as both the engineer and then the operator, the user on the other end of it. That's super cool.
That's I think that's something at MIT I didn't appreciate as an undergraduate as much, as that we all thought the engineers did everything. In fact, and in fact, engineers do run the universe, but there's more to it in terms of operations. And it's kind of interesting. I ran into one of my friends who's they call chief engineer for the commercial crew program. And he pretty much said, who knows better how to fly a spacecraft than the chief engineer? And it's like, well, pretty much anybody who actually has a chance to actually move it and make it. And that's the true thing about the operational world, is that that's where your design meets reality. And sometimes the design's great, but it wasn't manufactured well. Sometimes the manufacturer was great and the design was great, but the software wasn't good. There's all these little things. Or sometimes it would fit into a perfect parameter, but the spacecraft is not in that case. What do you do? And that's what the operators really help, is to take a good design and make it work and make it flyable, and always have a backup, a way out of things when something doesn't go right. And that's something as an undergrad you don't always appreciate, that the universe isn't perfect.
Oh, definitely. I can relate with that. So I would like to switch gears a little bit now. And learn more about your Russian studies and language experience, especially as a NASA astronaut. And I remember reading in your NASA bio that you're conversational in Russian language. Could you tell us a little bit about your Russian language studies and how you've used it as an astronaut?
Yeah, so great question. So boy, I'm really glad that I had that opportunity at MIT. They made me take another language, and I didn't speak any other languages growing up. So I picked Russian language because at that time there was Soviet Union, and the Soviets were doing super well in space. Space Station Mir had just launched. And it was a very mysterious thing at the time. We didn't know the names of the rockets. We didn't know, how they were built, and we just saw success after success in in the post, Apollo era, in the kind of, you call a space station era, and in the 1980s. And so that intrigued me. I said, maybe someday our two countries, America and Soviet Union, will work together. And so I studied Russian language. I was very fortunate that Ed Crawley Professor Crawley in AeroAstro. He opened the doors. This was during a period of glasnost in Soviet Union. Tavarish, what do you call? Premier Gorbachev had opened the doors a little bit, and MIT and the Moscow Aviation Institute, MAI, had had a summer program, very first one ever, and it was kind of experimental. And Professor Crawley, being the genius that he is, he put a note up in the halls of the AeroAstro area, and it was all in the Russian language. So if you could read it, you knew what it said, and you could show up at the meeting for a possibility. So I spent a summer in 1989. One of the last summers of Soviet Union in Moscow, and what a neat experience. And I apologize to the Russian language department for my deplorable and horrible Russian language skills. I was a very mediocre student, and the letter grade that we give to mediocre students is like C. And I think that was pretty much the only C's that I got at MIT, but it was worth every bit on it. However, for me, as an experiential learner, sitting there and talking with my friends, and I do appreciate Pushkin's poetry, but and nominative and dative cases and all those things, those are super important. If anyone asks, that's what I said. But for me, that's not how I learned best. I sat around with my friends and literally tea, that's not a euphemism. When I was only 18, 19, 20, those kind of things. We drank tea, and we talked about rockets and airplanes and Soviet Union and United States and everything. And that repetition is the mother of learning. Повторение мать учения, скажем. So that's how I learned. And by the end of the several months in Soviet Union, I came out говорить and not able to stop. That skill was on my resume when I applied to the NASA astronaut office in 1996, and that's exactly when the Soviet Union had fallen, changed, collapsed, reorganized, however you want to call it. There's a lot of different words. None of them are exact, but the Soviet Union was no longer, and the United States and Russia in the early 1990s decided to be friends and partners in space. And we started the Shuttle Mir program, or Mir Shuttle, and then which was phase one of the International Space Station. And my class was hired to help build and fly the International Space Station, and having Russian language as in my resume was super helpful. So Professor Crawley, if you're out there listening, thanks. I couldn't have done it without you. So being able to express oneself in any language is super important, and I fit in the post-Soviet Russia era, and I was able to help build the International Space Station, then got sent to Star City and trained, and because I could talk and understand, was promoted to be able to fly on the left seat of Soyuz, and I did 6 training programs, lots of backups because they needed somebody that could do it, and then fly twice on the Soyuz. And again, because people who can talk and understand and comprehend and show and demonstrate, they're easier to work with. I was trusted to fly in Orlan spacesuit and for 6 Russian spacewalks, which was super cool.
That's so cool. That's, something that I've seen in the Museum of Cosmonautics is Orlan, the spacesuit sitting there. And so to think that, an American astronaut has had that opportunity, that's just absolutely fantastic.
You know what? My picture is actually in that museum, and I didn't feel old until I heard that.
I apologize. I definitely did not mean to make you feel old.
Oh, no. I don't feel old at all. But yeah, so the time goes by quickly, young Piper.
Yeah. Oh, man. So it sounds like you've had the chance then to use Russian language in training, and obviously on ISS then as well, and during launches and things.
Oh, absolutely. And there's even it's kind of strange. This isn't a brag, but this is something to help make up for my C's in Russian language. Was we teach we have our new astronauts when they come through, and since 1996 we've had quite a few of Russian language instructors to help my colleagues and myself too. I availed myself of service because if you don't use it, you lose it. improve myself in Russian language. So we have Russian language instructors, and they put together a course, and some of them, in terms of good examples, not bad examples, is I've given interviews and in Russian TV and things like that, and it was I listened back, and it's like, hey, there's a nominative and genitive and dative, all that. The endings are not too bad. Maybe not perfect, but pretty good. And so that's, I feel quite comfortable with the Russian language, and I feel comfortable flying spacecraft in Russian language. Again, War and Peace and some of Pushkin may be lost on me, but that's why I call it conversational and not fluent. But I bet I get my grade up to a B now.
I'll never forget in my own study abroad, I was talking with one of the students that I was leading the workshop for, and we were at a bookstore, and he kept giving me different books at various reading levels to try and figure out my reading level. And well, Maria, if you're here, you'll have to forgive me, but I think we figured out I have like a kindergarten reading level in Russian. So there's there's always work to be done and things to be improved for sure. I'm sorry, I totally lost my place on my question sheet here. What was it? So obviously, you did your study abroad in Russia at the Moscow Aviation Institute, which must have just been fantastic. And you've also worked in Russia as well as an astronaut and helping to design the ISS and launch that up into orbit. What was it like working in Russia in the space sector in particular?
It's well, anybody who's been to Russia, it's a different place, right? And actually, my very first foreign country was Soviet Union. So I didn't know what to expect in traveling abroad. So for me, Moscow always feels quite comfortable because I can read, I can talk, I know how things work. They keep changing the method of paying for the metro. We used to use 5 kopeck pieces, then they went to little tickets. Now there's cards. None of that bothers me, and I feel comfortable there because it's not scary, because I can read and talk. And I can imagine for those who come in who don't have the background, seeing a different alphabet and what can be perceived as a kind of a scary place. And Soviet Union was a little bit scary from an American perspective during Cold War. You can find that it's a really great, beautiful city, especially in the summertime. I enjoy the wintertime too, with fantastic people and just amazing things. So getting to first work and live in Moscow, especially in the late 1990s, it was a little bit Wild West. And then moving to Star City and spending time with folks who came before me. Excuse me. Oh boy, I thought maybe somebody's talking about me and I'm sneezing. But then to spend time with instructors and study things that I truly care about, how to fly spacecraft and learning new words. And it's a joy. And anytime I get a chance to go back to Russia or Kazakhstan and spend time with my colleagues and friends is a joy. And I was really glad to have that opportunity. Things are moving a little bit away from our heyday of working closely with the Russians on building space station. I personally think that we need to, as we go to the moon, that's the next big thing at NASA, the Artemis project. We're already working with some of our international partners from space station, and we need to find a way to work with our Russian colleagues. That partnership is a deep partnership, and any person who understands human culture, but also especially Russian culture, the bonds take a long time to forge, but once you do, they're very deep.
Yeah, thank you very much for sharing that. So I'd actually like to build off that idea a little bit of how the relationship between like U.S. and the Russia may be changing in the future, and particularly between NASA and Roscosmos. They've for such a long time worked together to safely send our astronauts and cosmonauts up into orbit, with commercial crew becoming more prevalent and Crew Dragon and CST-100 sort of taking over. Do you see any sorts of relationships forming between SpaceX and Boeing and private companies and Roscosmos? Or I guess, how do you see those relationships sort of panning out in the future?
Yeah, so we at NASA, we have a strong desire to continue working with our Russian partners. and it's a little bit tricky, right? So I'll explain it, but the big picture is you can't have all your eggs in one basket. We kind of had all of our eggs in one basket in the early 2000s when we were still building space station. In fact, we were planning on rotating all of our space station crews using space shuttle. Unfortunately, in 2003, we lost Columbia. My friends were on board, classmates. I still miss them terribly. We the Americans were without a way to get to space, and then our Russian partners stepped up and said, as true partners, again, these relationships can be very strong, forged deeply, and they offered us rides on Soyuz, and we found that was a more reliable, or shall we say regularly schedulable way to get into space than the space shuttle. And so we moved it to space shuttle, was more for assembly missions, and crew rotations became on Soyuz, first out of necessity, then just out of practicality. We've learned that lesson at NASA, and so one way to counter that is that we have both a Crew Dragon and a Starliner. So we have SpaceX and Boeing to get to space as Americans. So if there was something wrong or some kind of technical difficulty with SpaceX, we have Boeing. If Boeing doesn't work, we got SpaceX. In addition, we know that things are that variable, and we value the partnership too at NASA. So we are trying to trade seats. So we would say, all right, we will always put an American aboard the Soyuz, and a Russian aboard one of our, we call them USCVs. That means United States Crew Vehicle. So a Boeing Starliner or Crew Dragon. So the current plan is to try to do that. The Russians are smart. They say, "Hey, you're still experimental. You only have a couple flights. We're not going to jump on the Crew Dragon quite yet. But after 3 or 4 flights, let's talk about it." Of course, if any of you have ever done negotiations with Russians, the first answer is always "niet." And with Americans, we're always trying to say yes right away and give away things, or not give away things, but belie our position. So we were perceived as horrible negotiators because you're not supposed to say yes right away. So I think we're going to figure this one out.
Fantastic. Yeah, no, that's great news, especially as someone, who obviously loves both space and Russian culture. I think that would be really good to have that relationship preserved moving forward. So I guess the final question, before we move on to some wrap-up questions here is, do you think that Americans and American astronauts will still learn Russian language and use it on the job as astronauts?
Yeah, I certainly hope so, and we certainly do that. And I'm trying to understand my management and see if that is out of momentum or if that's out of pure strategy. And so I think it's strategic for us to do it, but I think part of it is also momentum. Since all the other previous astronauts had to learn Russian, those astronauts who weren't so lucky to know it ahead of time, they still do. The official language aboard the International Space Station is English, and that's not an American imperialism. That is an agreement that when we had space station freedom, the Japanese only wanted to learn one new language. The Europeans, it's often hard for them to agree among themselves. So it's easy to pick kind of an outside language. And English is kind of the ironic, isn't it? The lingua franca of science and technology at this moment in history. So we're supposed to only speak English aboard space station. Our Russian cosmonauts, they try hard, but it's not always successful. And I found, like on my first mission, I only spoke Russian. My Russian commander, he only spoke English. There were only 2 of us, and we had a grand old time. So I think it's good that we continue studying a Russian language. I also think that's as we move forward into not the deep future, but the near future, we might want to study other languages too. And so I like, for example, China is establishing itself in space. So having a background in that language would also be helpful. But I think first and foremost, the first country to go to space was Soviet Union, and Russia is carrying the mantle of that, along with a few other Soviet partners like Kazakhstan, where the launch site is and things like that. But Russian language has been part of the space program and will continue to be part of space program. So if you have to learn another language, Russian is one. And even if you don't have to, you should.
I agree. It's been, I don't know, so personally like fulfilling for me as well as professionally. And I love to hear about you and the ISS commander speaking in the opposite languages. Navarro, it's like a really have to say that you are out of this world conversation partners.
Yeah, it did freak people out because they go like that, and of course he has a little bit of a Russian accent. My accent, no matter how hard I try, comes out to be a little bit American,
Oh,
and
mine too.
but it's a joy, and we showed that we could get along in space. Why can't we get along here on good old planet Earth?
Our pale blue dot. That's fantastic. Well,
Yeah.
just a couple more questions before we switch into audience questions. Just as a reminder to all of our attendees out there, feel free to submit your questions to the Q&A function if you have any. And so, Mike, I'm really curious what advice you would give to MIT students or any student in general who's interested in a career in aerospace or as an astronaut.
Yeah, free advice. You get what you pay for. So we are really at a cool period in history, and you can look back and say, no, Apollo was cool. It was. Oh no, space station, really cool. It is. But we're at a place where, so far, no matter how hard we've tried, it's been 60 years since people have launched into space, and we're only in the 500s. Maybe we might touch 600 this year of people that have been to space. And again, depends what you want to call been to space. Do you have to do an orbit or not? If you get a chance to go see Earth from high above, you will appreciate our beautiful planet, the most beautiful in the solar system. You will appreciate it even more. So this is a grand and great thing for humans to do with our energies, instead of fighting each other, but to work together. And working together in space is awesome. So we're in a great place because we've opened up the doors to industry. We have ways to get into space that aren't going through the government bottleneck. And I'm not saying anything bad about it. I'm just saying that's exactly how it's supposed to work. We opened the doors, and now industry is coming through. We have companies like SpaceX, Blue Origin, Sierra Nevada, Boeing, all having a chance to take us to space, and new companies out there, new rockets coming online. And if you are a student who loves air and space, course 16, you should consider it. There are so many things to learn, and then you can take that knowledge directly. And of course, even though the globalization was something of the 2010s, and we're in the 2020s now, it's still a thing. And working together with partners from all across the planet are definitely ways that we're going to go to the moon and Mars. And so you should be aware of other cultures. You should be aware of other languages. And again, the more you know, the more opportunity you have. Потому что я могу говорить по-русски. Спасибо за было какая-то программа обмен студентами со Советским Союзом давно, because I had the opportunity because I could speak Russian. There was opportunity to go to Soviet Union, be exchange student. It opened the door for NASA. I was the youngest guy in my class. I got hired right away. You'll hear stories of really smart and wonderful, handsome and beautiful people, waiting 5 times and going through 5 interviews just to finally get their NASA job. I got it right away. And by the way, NASA is not the only way to become astronaut anymore. So this is a beautiful time to be in space. Study hard, look at the opportunities, get experience, get operational experience, and keep up your design chops, and you'll go far.
Well, спасибо. Thank you very much for the advice. По-моему, ваш акцент очень хорошо. I think your accent is great. Ничего. And so last question, and then we'll take some from the audience here. But and I think what you said segued beautifully into this. But as a student of both Russian and aerospace, I'm always looking for new ways to sort of intersect these two passions and combine them in my career and what I do every day. What advice or recommendations do you have for students in similar shoes?
Yeah, so again, there's a lot of opportunities out there, and to actively look for them and find them. find what inspires you, right? So for me, it was rocket engines and space systems design and actual space operations. So that's where I studied. I put my studies. I liked space and I liked airplanes, and so I've had a chance to aviate a lot with the Air Force. And for me, it was aeronautics and astronautics, and that's not way for everyone else. There's also a way to combine your foreign language studies and studies abroad, and that really brings a depth of knowledge uh, to your resume and to your CV, where you can actually be able to really help build something new. And there is a joy in being an engineer where you take something that's an idea, a dream, and you make it into reality. And that's a joy that the AeroAstro Department and the School of Engineering have been sharing. But the Russian language studies have helped us to do that, not just in one language, but in many. So take advantage of the opportunities, find out what inspires you. I'd like to share real quick. We didn't get to it earlier, but I'm going to share my screen for two different pictures real quick, if you don't mind, because I know we're going to other things. But this, if any of you were around, Piper, can you give me a thumbs up if my sharing is there?
Yep, I see it.
This is a National Geographic, October 1986. All right, I started MIT in 1985 in the what do you say, in the fall semester. So this is the time I started taking Unified, and this magazine came out, and it was talking about Soviets in space. Are they ahead? And that really inspired me. And then so I still have a copy. In fact, I have two copies of this National Geographic, but I brought it out, and that picture you just saw, this is me in a similar spacesuit. This is a more modern version of the Orlan, but it has, you can see the same Soviet design. And I was so lucky, and it was because I made the most of opportunities. And I just want to share one more kind of thing that helped, what inspired me, right? What was I thinking? And let me share one more real quick. I think we have just a few more moments in time, but let's do it. I'm going to share my screen once more. And a thumbs up if you're seeing it. So here's a picture of me. You can see in the bottom right-hand corner, that kid was about, I think I was about 10 or 11. And my very first model rocket, I went to a summer camp locally. It was crazy times in the 1970s. My parents let me take a bus by myself. I would not do that with my children these days. But my very first rocket was this SD's Russian Vostok. And I didn't know anything about Soviet space program, except they had rockets apparently, and Yuri Gagarin. So I built my first rocket was a kit that they gave to us. We had to build it. And but you can see it launching in the left-hand part of your screen. And what's really neat, what I found, I would say ironic, but 30 something years later, I'm in the great big brother of the Vostok and the Soyuz launch craft. And here I am getting ready, on the launch pad to go. And so what we say in Russian language, "Всё возможно," right? Everything is possible. So I'd like to kind of just leave a little bit there, just saying that, hey, it is, your dreams are possible. It can happen to you if it could happen to me. And so find something that inspires you and go for it. It's pretty cool.
Спасибо за все. Thank you so much. That was super cool just to see the juxtaposition of those two pictures. It's like the best sort of before and after.
Well, that's kind of my story, Piper. I'm looking forward to hearing your story, and any of the other students that are out there in Zoom land. Please, tell me your stories too, because it's going to be even cooler. Although I have to say, I'm pretty lucky in how cool I've had so far.
Yeah, fingers crossed my story will be as cool as yours one day. That's what
I want it to be еще лучше.
Еще раз?
Еще лучше. I want your story to be even better.
Давай. Yep. No, I hope so as well. Yeah, so we'll go ahead at this point and we'll ask some questions from the audience here. We've got a couple in there. Just again, reminder to submit to the Q&A function if you have a question that you'd like to ask Mike. So we'll go ahead and ask, the first question is from Jake Hekla. Did your Soyuz capsule use the Cactus nuclear altimeter? And was there ever a concern that you'd get a bit of a radiation dose while getting out of the capsule under abnormal conditions?
Yes, ha ha ha. Somebody in the know. So in the Russian language, cactus means, I think, cactus, the spiny little plant out in the desert. They don't have so many in the deserts of the steppe of Kazakhstan, but I'm sure some exist. But yes, so the tricky bit is we Soyuz comes down and has one parachute, and the parachute is enough, but we have these двигатель мягкая посадка, what do you call, soft landing engines that right before we touch down, they ignite. But how do you make an altimeter that tells you when you're exactly 1 meter above the ground? It's really tricky, right? You try radio waves, they're kind of long, they don't work. You try microwaves, it's hard to make a transmitter that can handle the rigors of spaceflight. So we have a gamma ray altimeter. And so it uses a small little piece of radioactive materials. It has a gamma ray and it works great. Although I don't know, I take Russian language literally because when you read it and spell it and things like that, everything's like, it's so regular compared to English. It's not perfectly regular. It's not a Balkan language or something strange like that, but Russian's a really cool language that way. And but so when they say engines for soft landing, I expected a soft landing. And and on a first landing, I said, "Dang it, those engines didn't work." And they said, "Sure they did." And they wouldn't let us walk, so they carried us around, and to look, because I could look at the bottom end of the spacecraft because we fell on our side after landing, which is perfectly normal. And so we looked at the bottom, and sure enough, these engines looked like they had gone off. But they couldn't bring me too close because I said, "I want to go and see a little bit more." And they said, "Nope, you got to watch out for the radiation." In fact, they teach us during that survival school that if, especially as boys, if you wanted to go relieve yourself, don't go back there unless you want to glow in the dark.
Oh my gosh, that's too funny. Thank you so much. Yeah, that's fascinating. I've heard similar things about landing in the Soyuz, that it gives it wakes you up.
Yes, yes, indeed.
So our next question from Larry Young. We have been told about the importance of teamwork as compared to individual excellence in astronaut selection. What are your comments on that?
Wow. Hey, Professor Young, great to hear your text, or however to say that, right? Thank you. Yes, this is a secret, and any of you, whether you're going to be professional astronauts like government astronauts at NASA, like myself, or if you're going to be on a really cool engineering team making the first Martian habitations, whatever you do, it's all teamwork. This idea of a scientist or engineer working in her laboratory late at night and making all the discoveries is a fallacy, and it's really a thing, is that space flight is definitely the world's biggest team sport. So we have to work together. And since I joined NASA, we've adopted modern ways of trying to see if people would fit into the astronaut program, especially when we get 18,000 people for like 12 slots. We'll ask people to fix things, see if they're handy with their hands, if they can make things. Mens et manus, as we say in Latin, right? Mind and the hands. We also see if people can work together, and we've had to ask people to leave the astronaut program if they can't work well with others. So being on a team and learning to work together, even if you don't always agree or perhaps even like the people you're working with, it's an important skill. And sometimes at MIT, we like to do things by ourselves, but it's the social skills that help us to be successful in our big team sport of going to explore the universe.
Thank you very much for that answer. Moving on to the next one, I'm going to combine a couple of questions here from John Posada and Charlotte Lowy. Do you think there are any differences in what NASA versus ESA focus on in astronaut candidates? Apparently ESA is currently accepting applications, which I did not know. And additionally, do you have any insight on astronaut selection for things that are difficult to capture just in one's athletics or academics?
Yeah, so I'll answer. It's a two-part question with two parts and answer. So the first part is ESA and NASA. I think we work together in selecting astronauts. There are different political and social considerations, but the actual technical part of looking for people with good degrees who have proven themselves in extraordinary circumstances, as well as having some hands-on operational experience. I think both the European Space Agency and NASA work have very similar criteria. Uh, NASA, we're always sensitive to the demographics of our country, and the ESA being a consortium of many European countries, they can't all hire French people, for example, because we've got to have at least a German and maybe an Italian. So those kind of things have to work themselves into it. I'm looking forward to the future where it becomes less of a political thing that spaceflight, and it's always been political up till this point. Yuri Gagarin didn't just launch for the joy of launching. It was a Soviet statement that the United States took great awareness of. So these kind of things are a factor. But in the future, we're going to pick people that are exactly, hey, are they exactly just the person that's going to be able to fly the spacecraft, or the person that's going to be the best horticulturist on the moon, those kind of things. And we won't care if they're German or French or any particular demographic. And it's going to be, everybody's going to have the same opportunity. It's going to be awesome. But we're not there yet as humans, so we still got to work our way through it. So ESA and NASA have similar recommendations. Here's the thing, right? It's some people will try to get multiple advanced degrees and things like that to try to say, well, I'm going to max out on that point system at NASA. The real trick to NASA is to get into an interview, and we usually typically we bring in about 100 people for interviews. In my class, we brought in 100 people and hired 35 of us. So my odds were good. I was probably the last one, but I got in. Since then, one of the recent classes had only 8 people, so your chances became 8 and 100 for that class. But to get into the interview, you have to have a degree. But it's a little bit of more of a checkbox than saying, well, I got a 3.9 average at this school, and I went to this school and went to this school. It's like we also look at a lot of operational experience and teamwork, and those are the kind of things that help. And to be honest, Russian language or knowledge of other languages and cultures, because we at NASA, we appreciate that it takes a lot of work and teamwork to work together, including with our international partners. So I would definitely, again, I'm not on the committee this year when we have astronaut selections going through, but if you have some hands-on experience, if you have mens et manus, right, the MIT motto, mind and hands, that's important, and having the operational experience really does help. And that's why we have not a majority, but we have a lot of military folks, because the military gives us, the Air Force, for example, the Navy gives us a lot of hands-on experience in operational, and whether it's testing, flight testing, or flying, that helps us with space skills too. But not every test pilot is qualified to become an astronaut, and not every astronaut comes in with any flight experience. But if you have those kind of things on your resume, that definitely helps. And it's also a lot of fun. If you never get selected, you still have a lot of joy of the joy of flying.
Thank you very much, for that advice. That's fantastic. I'm sorry, I totally lost my train of thought there. So we have a question from Joyce Light as well. Do you foresee a way to incorporate your aerospace engineering and astronautic experience and your Russian background once you retire from the astronaut corps?
Retire? Hey, Joyce. Nice to hear your voice. Yeah, so what does an astronaut want to be when they grow up, right? All I ever wanted to do was be an astronaut, but now I've in the program for 25 years. It took me 10 years from my last space flight to this next one, so I don't know if I have another 10 years that I want to wait, not when there's more adventure out there. I'll probably be looking for a place where I can share my experience. I think you can tell I'm a blabbermouth. I love to talk and share experience. So I think my next round, maybe I'd like to join academia somehow and share some of my knowledge and some of my experience and the practical knowledge of things. And sure, I can help talk about the fundamental nature, aerodynamic nature of flutter, or some mechanical things of creep and metals or things like that. But I think I bring a lot of experience of flying in aviation and in space, and an international sense, and program management and all those things that young engineers need if they go join a company, whether it's SpaceX where they have less paperwork, or say Boeing or Lockheed where they have more paperwork. You still need to know paperwork.
That sounds like a class that I would be interested in taking, metallic creep as taught by former astronaut Mike Fincke. We are coming up on time here, so to respect your time, I think we'll go ahead and sign off now. I just wanted to thank you again so much for your time today. It was absolutely fantastic getting to talk with you, and I know I definitely learned a lot. I'm really looking forward to watching your upcoming launch on CST 100. And as we say in Russian, to wish somebody good luck, ni pucha ni para. To all of our wonderful attendees today, thank you so much for joining us. Just as a reminder, one more time, this event was recorded, and so keep an eye on your email inboxes for a link to the recording on YouTube. Mike, thank you again. It was a pleasure.
Спасибо большое. And I wish all of you out there the very best, those who are beginning your careers and those who are comfortably lying on your laurels. This has been a joy for me to share some experiences with you all. And let's do this again sometime.
Хорошо. Увидимся.